Keynote, the next panel, which will be on circularity and decarbonization in the supply chain. And this is a very timely panel because we are at a unique point in time. We have two transitions that this world has to manage at the same time. We have the energy transition and we have the circularity transition. Now, unfortunately, we also have a lot of disruption that distracts. We have AI disruption, we have tariff disruption, we have geopolitical tension. So how do we bring it all together? I actually think we are at the point where so many things are changing that we have to reimagine business. Let me tell you what I mean. When we look at decarbonization, we all know, especially here in Belém, that 1.5 currently is out of reach. We're debating if we're overshooting or if we have to reset that, which would mean triggering tipping points. A terrible idea. If we're looking at the 2-degree line, and that one is not even really within reach right now, that 2-degree line is a line that humanity has not crossed in 300,000 years. Humanity has not existed on this planet with more than 2 degrees centigrade. So as a company, we fully recognize the responsibility that we have to electrify our fleet, we have to electrify our production, we have to move our buildings to net zero. We're doing all of that by 2030. But we're talking supply chain today. We also have a minus 30% target for Scope 3, which means working with our suppliers, helping them decarbonize, but it also means changing our own products. Now let's put a pin here, because we can't choose the crisis we want to address, because we have to address all of them together. So let's move to circularity. It's like, how do we move from take, make, waste to closing the loop? Here as well, of course, we have way too much waste. We know it. Household waste today is so high that it would be the equivalent of 5,500 Empire State Buildings. Or, if you put it on garbage trucks, it's 100 million garbage trucks a year, just household waste. It could circle the earth several times. But it's an opportunity as well. When you think about electronics waste, we have around 60 million tons of electronic waste a year. Now that waste, that includes $90 billion worth of copper, of gold, of rare earth. If we can close the loop, we do not have to take it out of the ground. We could alleviate the pressure on biodiversity if we manage to close this loop. Circularity for a company like Siemens means, again, starting with the product. We need to redesign, so not only to decarbonize our products, but we also need to design for circularity, for updatability, for upgradability, for repairability. We make it modular, so they don't go to waste. They stay in the loop. Every product has more than one life. It should stay there as long as possible. But in order to do that, we also have to change our business models, because if we don't earn more by selling more, if we really gonna tackle the challenge of decoupling growth from resource consumption, that means we have to change our business models. We have to move to product as a service, which would actually be a huge opportunity. I think someone in the previous panel talked about air conditioning, which is a big challenge, especially in the developing world. If we move to cooling by the hour, we can make that with a lot higher quality. We can keep it running much longer. We would reduce the waste of that. So circularity is an enormous opportunity. But let's talk about disruption, because I'm talking about a system change. Tariffs are not just bad. Tariffs are actually a huge incentive to keep resources in the loop. we will see new market dynamics coming out of the current resetting of the global regime with tariffs. Now we have an AI disruption as well. Industrial AI is not new. It's been around for around 30 years. What it is now in industry, it's a powerful tool. And this powerful tool is for good. The benefits far outweigh the cost. With industrial AI, we can put 30% more load on the same grid. With industrial AI, we can redesign products in a way that we never did before. We can use new substances in the design process, and we can have them 3D printed. The opportunities of using material coming out of the bioeconomy, moving to bio-based materials, that opportunity is being opened with AI. So there's a lot of opportunity. We have to look at the glass being half full and not half empty, because we have so many disruptions, we have system changes, that this is the unique opportunity in time with data, AI, and facts to reimagine what business can be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eva. As you can see, I'm multitasking. Thank you very much. And on that wonderful note from Eva, I would like to welcome two of our fireside chatters, because it's not going to be a panel, it's going to be a conversation amongst wonderful, wonderful partners of the World Climate Foundation and people that have contributed a lot towards what's happening now here at COP30 in Belém. To come onto the stage, I would like to invite Pim Valdre from the World Economic Forum. Can we give him a warm hand of applause? And then Luciana Staciarini Batista from CocaCola. Welcome, ladies. Sure.
Thank you so much, and a huge thanks to the World Climate Foundation for inviting me. My name is Pim Valdre. I'm the head of the Economic and Policy Agenda at the Center for Nature and Climate, the World Economic Forum. I head our decarbonization agenda, and I think today, we've covered a lot of ground here already. Today, I wanted to share a few insights from our private partners on what is standing in the way for efficient decarbonization. What are some of the market obstacles, but also some of the levers we are seeing, particularly when it comes to channeling finance and making sure that we get commercial lenders in early and at scale. And then I have the pleasure of also bringing in Luciana Batista, president in Brazil of the South Cone from CocaCola, to share a few insights from the ground on challenges and opportunities with circularity as a lever. So I think, 10 years from the Paris Agreement, we've made a lot of stride. What I think is a bit paradoxical is that 10 years ago, we saw a lot of policy coherence. We saw a lot of policy momentum around this agenda, but we didn't see the markets, right? Flip forward 10 years, we see the markets are moving. There's a lot of momentum here, looking at the real economy, looking at the different industry sectors, trying to problem solve and move ahead. But we're seeing a bit of policy divergence and policy uncertainty. And I think that's really challenging, and I think that's something that we collectively have to address. So if we look at a bit the state of the transition, particularly when it comes to decarbonization of the hard-to-abate sectors that we work in, so cement, aluminium, steel, and also on the mobility side, aviation, heavy trucking, and shipping, what we're seeing are still persistent market obstacles. So essentially green premium risks, supply and demand deficits, lack of enabling policies and infrastructure, but particularly complexities in creating favorable conditions for capital flows and deal making. And a core problem that we are seeing is that question of bankable demand. How do we get essentially credible and long-term purchase commitments that make lenders comfortable investing and gives them a clear horizon? So this is what we're trying to do at the World Economic Forum. And we addressed this by launching a coalition called the First Movers Coalition. It was 4 years ago. At COP26 in Glasgow, and essentially did that to do two things. How do we bring supply and demand together to essentially generate demand and visible purchasing signals for these low emissions technologies that we need to scale? And I'm pleased to say that we started with 35 companies. Today we have 102. We've generated over 125 early demand commitments for near zero materials, and that translates into $19 billion demand signals. And this also requires buy-in because it's actually the CEO that signs this purchasing agreement. So we also have something called the First Suppliers Hub, where we essentially bring these ready-to-scale technologies together with the demand side. So I also just wanted to make an example. We spoke, and I think the previous panel spoke also about that gap, the gap between bankable demand and available finance, and how do we bring in again lenders early and have them to scale. And I'd like to give an example of what we have seen as sort of a creative finance mechanism, what that looks like, and really what partnering looks like in practice. And we had in June Sublime Systems, which is a breakthrough cement startup that was spun out of MIT. Is one of our first mover suppliers, signed a multi-year offtake agreement with Microsoft for over 600,000 tons of ultra-low carbon cement. How could they do this? What was the sort of mechanism here that unlocked that? And what was innovative really was the structure. And in the agreement, Microsoft was able to purchase environmental attribute certificates, EACs. And this basically produced two things. It gave Sublime, the startup, available capital to put together the factory and to scale and start the production. And that in turn gave the lenders line of sight of revenue generation. So that is the way that we concretely are trying to bridge that that gap between bankable demand and finance. And finally, I also just want to say that I also lead our CEO Climate Leaders Alliance with over 133 CEOs that come together to scale mitigation and decarbonization. And particularly we focus on scope 3, right? And I know that's a huge scope for you as well. It's around 85% of emissions for most companies. And we are also starting to look at what are the more efficient levers there. Circularity is emerging more and more as something that is seen as not only an environmental thing and the right environmental thing to do, but actually something that can generate revenue, right? Save cost, generate revenue, and innovate. And maybe, Luciana, you wanted to share a few sort of thoughts on how you are working on that and what challenges you are seeing.
Yeah, thanks, Mim, and thank you, everyone. Super happy to be here and learn so much from many inspiring speakers. So first of all, the way that we look into our full chain, right? So as a producer of beverages, the whole idea is that we, first of all, we work together with our bottling partners, typically companies in each of the countries where we operate. Like here in Brazil, we have like local partners here in Brazil that are those who produce and distribute our products. But understanding that we have the full responsibility, that's what you're talking, the full scope 3 responsibility, we need to work alongside these bottling partners and with their suppliers in order to work on the food chain for decarbonization. And also balance this with our other objectives in terms of sustainability around water, for example, around waste management, for example. So this is all an agenda that has to work all together. So a few examples on how we see that. So when we talk about transportation of our products, right, how do we actually work alongside with partners? I was discussing with also with the Siemens team, like how we've been working together with them and Volkswagen on all the fleet and trucks. Or as we talk about a second element that is important from our carbon footprint, that is the coolers, like the fridges that carry our products. And how can we actually work on certificates and only buying efficient coolers, right? So that we, over time, also diminish the demand for energy for each of these products. And also how we also evolving and working on the circularity agenda for our packaging. How do we do that? By also fostering a circularity chain that minimizes its own carbon footprint. So we were talking about an example so that we have this target to collect all the packaging that we have, And here in the state of Pará, just to name an example, there was no recycling plant. So every plastic that was collected would have to travel all the way 2,000 kilometers to the most nearby processor facility. So as we were talking about investments, right, we partnered with a company that invested behind building a new plant so that we would supply, provide purchase security to allow for investing in a plant that actually produced at least a part of the chain here in the state and reduce it by half the transportation cost, because we would already have the flakes being transported versus the compacted bottles, right? So this is our ways that we have to work with each partner in the chain in order to understand ways where we actually can impact and reduce our footprint, but also meet our business objectives and also our other circularity objectives along the way.
Excellent. I mean, we've been talking about a lot of levers here, right? Technology, finance, investments. When it comes to policy, actually, on the circularity side, is that something that affects your strategy? Like, are there bottlenecks there? Are there good policy solutions you've seen to scale up circularity?
Yeah, and we were discussing this upfront, right? So actually policies are needed to actually foster collaboration across the industry and level the playing ground. So again, I lead the business in Brazil, and in Brazil we've just discussing and has released on a plastic decree, and actually having targets set by for all the companies to reach in 10 years the levels that we are already having today in terms of collection actually levels the playing field so that we allow for a step change in the infrastructure, right? So again, bringing the state of Pará as an example, right? We need to scale that volume to actually have a full recycling plant. And we cannot do that alone. We need to have more people investing behind and committing also to have recycled PET, for example, content as part of their packaging. So this is the idea of having like legislation that actually levels the playing field for the companies that also already have ambitious targets. I think this is actually very welcome, and this is something that for sure needs to happen in order to foster the industry to all row towards the same direction.
Excellent. No, I think what I've picked up and heard over these past days is that this is sort of it's a cup of geopolitics, it's a cup of real economy transformation, and it's a cup of communications. Winning the narrative on climate, making sure that it's not seen as a cost, but a benefit to society, I think is really critical, and it's something we're thinking about a lot. The jobs agenda, making sure that affordability is at the forefront of our strategy. How do you see that from a Brazilian perspective?
Yeah, and every time we manage to connect these agendas, I think that's the case where we have the most successful example and positive examples, right? So I given one example for us and one example in the chain. So for us, one of the examples is like returnability, right? Every time that we actually have a returnable bottle, actually, and we offer together with that an offer of affordability for the consumer, that actually generates a positive chain of not only having less resources being disposed, because that bottles typically will go and return 30 times. We've already used the current existing infrastructure, so it's a truck that is already coming and going back to the factory anyway, so there is no additional cost of that transportation leak. And also offering clients that are willing to let go the convenience of disposability, an incentive towards a lower price. So this is an example where we actually, from our side, we expand our consumer base because we are available, we give the possibility to offer a lower cost for the consumer, and from the consumer they see the actual benefit, and for the environment we are actually maximizing this. And what we also have seen working very well is, and again goes back to the point on legislation and capital, is that here in Brazil, for example, where we had like a lot of companies that are more and more investing behind recyclability, we actually see capital flowing into this industry, and more investors, private equity investors, like the fund that is investing behind this recycling plant that I just mentioned, actually going after this as an opportunity for investing in the long term when they do see that there is security. Like the discussion yesterday with Luciana from this Flying Rivers fund was exactly that. As an investor perspective, the most important thing that they can get is security that this is an investment that will have yield returns on the long term. And as companies, this is exactly what we end up offering, like having a long-term contract that is security of purchase so that it allows an investment that will actually yield a return to its own stakeholders. So that's when this loop works. I think that's the most interesting scenario for us to pursue and to promote a sustainable change.
Excellent. So line of sight on credible purchasing agreement and on revenue generation. I think maybe on that note, I think maybe we can wrap up here. I know the program is running a bit behind, but it was wonderful to be here. And thank you, Luciana, and have a good COP onwards.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Right on time, Pim. Well done. And thank you so much, ladies, for your wonderful fireside chat. So the last session is very exciting, and this is a session before lunchtime. I'm sure most of you are hungry, and trust me, we will feed you. But we have an incredible session that's about to take place now. It's a reflection of what's really happening here in Brazil, in Belém. For me, it always gets me quite excited when I see, engage, and meet the indigenous people of this wonderful country. So I'm going to call upon the stage Isabel Vieira. She is a president of Nauacia Amazonia Alliance. And this is a conversation, it's going to be quite brief, about the indigenous people of this beautiful country. Welcome, Isabel. Can we give them a hand of applause? A warm welcome.
Olá, bom dia a todos. Hello, good morning, everyone. I would like to call many of indigenous leaders that we have been working with. It is an honor. Thank you so much for opening the doors, even though if it was not in the program, so it won't last as much because we're going to have our lunch break soon. Well, I am working with indigenous people, not only in Brazil, but also through a unification of indigenous peoples in Peru, Mexico, Africa, and Brazil. And I would like to call here my dear partner, work partner, which is Mindahi Batista, that will explain what we are doing. The idea is to bring the ancestral knowledge to walk together with technology, modernity, science. So please, Mindahi, I will ask you to speak here and start the presentation of this beautiful work that we're doing together.
From the Otomi Toltec people from central Mexico. And we work together with the Earth Elders and also working with Isabel. And we are very happy to be here with our relatives from the Amazon. We send a special regards to Chief Ninawa, Chief of the Chiefs of the Hunikuin peoples. And we also have here with us Prince Apollinaire Rusolio from Benin, and also Masha Kovner from the Yakutia, Siberia territory, and some chiefs from different communities from all along the Amazon. So I like to say, first of all, that we are living in very important times. We are in transition. But this transition that we are living in is a big transition. Accordingly, with the prophecies that we follow, the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, and the prophecy of the new dawn, because we are ending a big cycle. May 3rd, 2013 ended a big cycle. And we have now 13 years of transition. It's going to be May 3rd, 2026 for the new accounting. So we as humans, we have the chance to recover and to rethink our dignity in front of other life relatives. We as human species, we think, especially in the Western world, we are the peak of the creation. We are the most intelligent beings in this world. But actually, we are not so intelligent because I remember myself being at the Earth Summit in 1992 as a young representative. And you know that the three covenants were signed. Even with the Paris Agreement that we know that is not binding, but it's a declaration, we are not getting better. It's not just the climate that is changing. This crisis is not just material crisis. This crisis is a spiritual and mental crisis. So this is the problem that we have. We are the problem, but we can be also the solution. If we really reconnect with the original instructions, with the law of nature and the law of the universe. And that's the reason rights of nature and the earth jurisprudence is so important. Because we are talking here about decarbonization and all of that, but really fossil fuels extraction is a big problem. We need to speed up, be more conscious about how we enter this new dawn, this new time. Because the time is now. Of course, there are photojournalists, there are historians, but think about that. Think about that. We honor our ancestors as original nations and peoples. But many people have lost track who they are, where they come from. So we need to honor the past. We need to honor ancestral wisdom. But also, we think about the future. We think about the future 7 generations to come. But we cannot live in the future. And we cannot live in the past. But in between. And that's the mystery of life. So the time is now to act and to come together in collaboration. That's the reason we are collaborating with Isabella. She is working very hard with Cambridge University to set up this new way of collaboration. Bring ancestral wisdom, traditional ecological knowledge with science. And we can respect the codes of ancestral wisdom in the Western society. Reciprocity, respect, responsibility for the beginning. But we want to bring back the good thinking, the beautiful thinking of life. And good thinking and beautiful thinking is about to bring back the collective dignity as human beings. Because this is our chance. In the rational mind, in the positivist way of thinking, we just think about how to get more with less. But we need to recover the life cycles. How to live with nature, not from nature. How to live with this sky, not from the sky. How to live with Mother Earth and not from Mother Earth. So this is the message that we are bringing to COP30. And not just to COP30, because this is a yearly thing, but we act every single day. We need to honor ourselves, our families, our communities, and if you are not honoring life, if everything that you produce or you consume is affecting life systems, if they are not in the circular economy, then they need to be displaced, those kind of ways of doing. Because we don't just want good life, we want good living. And good living is about to be responsible for our acts, responsible for what we eat, how we produce, how we feel, how we act. So, in synthesis, we have to go from the me to the we. This is the time, and the time is now. Poke kamadi, moshing intini kwada, moshing intini ku. Thank you very much. We bless you and your family, your communities. Kamadi.